Holly Cann, welcome to Resilient Retail. So excited to have you on. I have had the pleasure of already doing a panel with you and moderating one. So you and I kind of know each other. I know it's going to be a fun conversation. Can you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so you introduced me well. My name is the easiest name in the world to say. I'm Holly Cann, and I am currently the Senior Brand Manager for Fenty Skin. So most people know Fenty Beauty by Rihanna, and we just launched a sister brand, a skincare brand this summer. And so on the brand side, I'm really behind kind of like the strategic vision of everything you see about the brand. So like product, how we talk to the consumer, our strategy, how we show up in the world. Like that's basically the ins and outs of my job.
Yeah, you just you just said something that's really funny. We just talked to CJ Johnson and we went on this whole deep dive into like, what is branding? And people always have this idea that it's just like, it's the color palette and it's the pictures and it's the logo and it's only visual. But like what you're saying is you're on the brand, you know, you are senior brand manager, but that is a way bigger thing than just the actual design of the look of things.
I would say, honestly, the way the brand looks is probably one of the smaller pieces of my job. I think people fail to realize like how we show up in the world is a really big thing. So it's like who we talk to, the words we use, like our, maybe not like necessarily like our creative, but like the types of models we choose, what our brand values, what we stand for, like what we want to communicate to the customer, like all those things are really what a brand is. I think brands are really about like building a community and building something that people can connect with. And it's like, in order to have like a successful, really meaningful brand, you have to create like an emotional connection. And like, that is my job, to make you feel emotionally invested and connected into my brand and like you need my products.
Yeah. And how do you even begin to go about doing that when you're looking at, you know, you're brought on and you're like, okay, you have kind of the springboard of, you know, Fenty Beauty already there, but then Fenty Skin is its own brand. It's its own face and it has to sell a little bit differently than Fenty Skin, Fenty Beauty can. That's going to happen 1,000 times today. I'm going to keep doing it. How do you even, you know, take us back to like day one and you show up and you're looking at it like, what are you even thinking about in that moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think people think these brands are built overnight, and I would say that we spent like a bunch of years working on this before it came to market. And so, in terms of Fenty Skin, like it was always a no-brainer that skincare would be involved in something that we did. How that showed up, we weren't quite sure yet, but in order for like a good face and makeup, like everybody knows you want to have good skin underneath. So it was like very obvious. I think the challenge for us was like wanting to create a standalone brand versus an extension of Fenty Beauty, right? So like a lot of beauty brands and a lot of brands are like, let's just throw like a cleanser or some skincare products in the mix. And then they don't really do well and people don't think that they're effective or they work well. And so like, I think that for us was the biggest challenge. And I think what you do is like, we spent a lot of time going in circles about like, who are we talking to? Who is this girl? What is that? What is it that she wants? What is she not getting? What is she currently using now? Like there's so many things. And you basically just like keep refining and refining and refining. And some of it is a lot of guesswork, right? Like when you spend 2-3 years working on something behind the scenes, like you don't know what's going to be in the market when you come out and launch. Like you have no idea. And so part of my job is like really looking at where the trends are going, look at where like the industry is going and what we can do to set ourselves apart in terms of like when we start looking at building this brand. But I would say there's not a complete science to it, but there is a lot of thought and intention that goes behind the work that we do.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like how crazy this year has taught us that whatever you're watching, whatever trend, whatever forecasts are happening, like the world is moving so much faster than ever before and things are changing at a ridiculous rate. Especially with a brand at this caliber, you know, you have the Rihanna backing of it. So it's naturally going to have a high caliber to it. How do you, you know, in these like 2-3 years of planning, when you're looking and saying, okay, what's coming up, what themes, what trends, how are you even managing that without just constant like panic of we need to pivot, and just saying like, all right, we're still doing good. Okay, this means that maybe we should make this tiny tweak. How do you even like navigate that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of panic. I'm not going to lie. Like before we launched the brand, even now still, like now that the brand is around, like obviously I know our pipeline and what we're doing for the next few years. There are moments where I'm like, oh shit, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm like, we need to relook at this. Like, this isn't going to be good. But I think, again, it goes back to like your consumer and knowing your core base, right? Like, if you know who you're talking to and you know who she wants, I think that will always give you a clear path forward into terms of like what you do next. You never want to do something that's like so trendy it's inauthentic to the person you're talking to, or it doesn't quite meet their needs or expectations. So it's really like knowing that group who you're going after and staying true to that is super easy. And with Rihanna, like she's very clear about like her fan base, her demographic, like what she wants, who she wants to talk to. And so it becomes a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but it is a little bit more clear as long as we are keeping that in mind. You know, like there are some no-brainers. We were like, oh yeah, we would never do that. Rihanna would never do that. Like that's obvious, you know, or, and so that it becomes a little bit easier as you just like hone in on what it is you're going after.
Yeah. There's this unique thing with Fenty Skin that you just touched on where like you have this mega founder in Rihanna who has her own brand. She herself is a brand. And so you're basing then products and brand off of another product and brand and human being. And so you almost have this like starting point that feels really good. How do you take that and then turn it into a brand that can speak to more people? And now you guys are even speaking to both women and men. Is it that you're harnessing just Rihanna's personality through everything, through the brand? Or is it you're harnessing some belief system or, you know, the way she thinks about things throughout the brand? How do you kind of go from a single person and then draw out a brand that can talk to a large mass amount of people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would just say that like all of us are the sum of all of our parts and thoughts and like things that make us who we are. Like Rihanna is a multifaceted individual. She's not just the superstar that we see. And I think when you think about it that way, it becomes very easy, right? Like there are some core values that are aligned with like who she is that are part of who our brand is, like inclusivity, like including men in our campaign, including different faces, different sizes. Like that's a big part of like who she is as a person, right? So when you take that out, you're like, well, this can translate to our brand. When you take out like that she cares about the earth and the environment, and our brand is, you know, we're moving towards being earth conscious. Like that's a big part of what we do. So I think that you know, like who you see as a person isn't all of who she is. And so you take those things out and you can build a story and you can build something around it that is meaningful and that will connect with people. I think all of us can do that, right? With our own personal brands. Like I'm not just a brand manager for Fenty Skin. Like there's so many other parts about me that if I were to make my own personal brand, that there are other things that are probably more interesting. Same with Rihanna. Like the fact that she's a superstar is not probably the most interesting thing about her. It's just all that we see. And so we get a chance to take out those other pieces and like show the world what else is there.
I love that. And it's like finding the non-negotiables in your strengths. So whether it's a person or a flagship product that you have or your very first store ever, whatever, if you're trying to evolve, which I think right now everybody's trying to evolve because we've been forced to in the middle of a global pandemic and everything else that 2020 has thrown our way, is there's this lesson of find your non-negotiables and then find the things that you can maybe shed. And then what can you build around those non-negotiables in a new way? Exactly. So it's really, it's evolution, but you're not changing who you are. You're not changing the core.
No, exactly. That's a really good way to put it. We definitely have some non-negotiables on the brand.
Yeah. And you have to just stick to those. Now, we've been talking about the build up to the launch. You guys launched 31st of this year, so still quite new. I have to ask the question, what was it like to launch a brand in the middle of a global pandemic unlike we've seen in years and years?
That's the craziest thing. I don't even honestly, like, I mean, I was a part of the Fenty Beauty brand when we launched Fenty Beauty, and obviously like that was insane. We all know the impact that Fenty Beauty had, and I didn't think that there was going to be anything that was more challenging or more insane than like doing that. And I think that this launch might have been. And I say that because like we basically were operating for months in a world of unknown, right? Yeah. So you make all these plans, you have this timeline, you're like, we're going to do all these things in order to like execute this launch. And then it's like, boom, there's a pandemic and we don't know when it's going to end. And we don't know if we can leave our houses and we don't know if we can do. And so it's like our product was impacted. Our creative was impacted. Like I'm literally at home working, trying to like launch this brand with people around the world and around the globe. Like it was just the amount of coordination that was required in order to pull this off was insane. Even the smallest things that like you take for granted that you don't even think about, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, like I didn't even have any product myself, you know? So it's like people are like, oh, people that I need to send product to are like, well, can I have product? I'm like, I don't have product. Like,
I don't know.
I'm like, I don't even have our product. Like, I can't help you right now. Like, we're in a pandemic. So stuff like that. Or like getting content with Rihanna. Like, we couldn't shoot because all of Hollywood production is shut. Like, things like that. You're just like, we really had to pivot hard. And I'm so proud of all the work that our team did and just like the perseverance and resilience, literally the resilience it took to get this done. Cause it was intense.
Yeah. So, you know, with all of this going on, I can only imagine years in the works. You guys are trying to think about launch. With launch comes naturally some sort of event or some sort of hype building thing. And you naturally want Rihanna to be there. You want her involved, but that involves flying and traveling and people coming together.
Yeah.
And then again, pandemic, which is basically telling us you can't do any of that. What was that like to try and take that massive, exciting launch thing you guys had planned and have to say, all right, we got to rethink this from the bottom up because the central basis of meeting somewhere can't happen?
Yeah. I mean, that was probably one of the biggest challenges we had. I think it's something that we were all really fearful of just because like when we had the Fenty Beauty launch, we had this huge party, like you said, it was super explosive. It was an event that everybody wanted to be at. I still see pictures from that event like everywhere when she's in like her yellow like t-shirt and skirt situation. Like those pictures are all over. And so I think initially there was a little bit of a disappointment that we couldn't do that. I think there was also a little small piece of hope that maybe come July, like we'd be able to have an event. And as it got closer, we were like, okay, well, we have to pivot digitally. I think the thing that was really challenging is at the point in the summer that we launched the brand, we had been in the pandemic for like 3 to 4 months in the US already. And so like so many events had happened that we were like, ooh, now we have to launch the brand and now we have to try to do something digitally, virtually that nobody else has done. And it just becomes really challenging. But Camille, my counterpart on the marketing team, she did an amazing job basically planning and executing this virtual house party that we had, which I was obsessed with. I don't know, like, listen, like a house party is so my vibe. It's like up my alley. And the house that we designed, I was like, I want to live in this house. Like, this is so cool. So the response we got from it was really great. It still felt like we were able to have this big moment virtually and people were like, we got people engaged and involved. We had like Lil Nas X and like other people there. So that was super cool. And it worked out really well. It is still a little bit like bittersweet, you know, because we didn't really have that like big moment. But I think when we look back on this year and the way we were able to pivot, like there will be no reservations about what we accomplished.
Yeah. What I like is hearing even between the two different kind of launches with Fenty Beauty doing the whole, you know, party. And we all know, like you say it and I know that outfit that Rihanna's wearing. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen this picture. I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. Yeah. It's so visceral. But being able to then do a different kind of launch, it seems like what you guys maintained in both of them was, okay, we might have lost the physical point. We might have lost the, you know, Rihanna in a beautiful gown walking down a red carpet, but we maintained the importance of a community launch. So with all of this going on around the pandemic and dealing with these launches in such a new way, what do you think has been the most surprising thing you've learned in the last couple of months of growing this brand?
We know nothing. Well, outside of knowing nothing, I would honestly, like, I know that sounds crazy, but there are things like working in a pandemic, you encounter things every day that you're just like not prepared to deal with, or like you don't have the answers to how to solve because this is like such an unprecedented time. You're like, well, what do I do now? Like, I don't have a solution to this. So I need to problem solve and figure it out. And so I think feeling comfortable in the fact that like you really just don't know what you don't know, there's like strength in that, right? Because I think in terms of like building a brand and running a business, like there's this myth and this thought that like you have to know how to do it all and you have to have all the answers. But like a lot of what we do in order to stand out and be different and execute things in a way that nobody has is like truly unknown.
Yeah.
And there's like some beauty in it, right? There's like a beauty in like collectively coming together and being like, we have this problem. We have no idea what we're going to do, but like, we've got this. And then you like knock it out of the park. And doing that in a time like this when like retail is down and everyone's bummed out and like you can't even shake somebody's hand is incredibly challenging, but also like very rewarding. And so I think that's probably been like the toughest thing. It's just like embracing that and like going with the flow.
I feel like this is really helpful advice too for brick and mortar merchants to be listening to, because like you're saying is, you know, we're all going through this world of unknown. And then even the way you guys are trying to grow a brand within the pandemic, like we know nothing. We know absolutely nothing. And so the only thing you can do is to go in and say, maybe my power is in the knowing nothing. And so I'm free to test things. I'm free to try things that we've never done before, because the other option is to just be stagnant. And that's you can't possibly do that.
Exactly. And I think one thing to keep in mind, and, you know, for a lot of these retailers and a lot of these businesses, like our client is already online. Like everyone's so digitally savvy. Everyone like Googles things before they even go into store. Everyone looks for things and products before you go into store. And if you just keep that perspective in mind, like where is this person already doing? What are her habits? That makes the unknown like a little bit easier to navigate, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole point of innovation is making something that you already do easier, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if I'm trying to make it more accessible for this girl to come buy my stuff, like I need to figure that out. Like I need to think, what steps do I need to take and what do I need to change in what I'm currently doing to get this in her hand or to make her want to buy it? And to your point, like testing things and playing with things and finding new creative solutions to make that happen. I think, you know, we all have that ability. All these retailers have that ability and they just need to like react.
Yeah. Now, from a branding perspective, Fenty Skin has a really unique look and feel. I actually read something online today that said, quote, "It's very clean and fresh, but also feels pure and has some edge. It feels a bit daring."
Yes.
I feel like that's the perfect explanation to it. You know, the colors are light and welcoming. It's a nice matte purple. The wet water has kind of this golden pink, but also clear, high gloss feeling. It's unthreatening while still feeling very luxury. And then the price isn't massively high. So it does have that accessibility. Can you walk us through kind of the strategy and the decision making that ended up having the team settle on that look?
I think the easiest thing to say without going into too much detail, I obviously can't give away all of our secrets, but I would just say that, you know, the great thing about Rihanna and her just being so covetable herself is like people want a piece of that, right? Like we all like, she's so pretty, she's so like talented, and we're all like, what can we do to have like a little bit of that? And I think when you keep that in mind, making product and making that feel accessible to people was like a no-brainer, right? So it's like, you know, if this girl or this man is like really young and they don't have a ton of money, but they want something luxurious, it's like, how do we create that? How do we give them that feeling of like, you get a small piece of Rihanna that still feels like authentic and luxurious and sexy and a little bit edgy, but it's not like $500 or like $200 for an eye cream. Like, how would you make it affordable? And so I think that was really clear for us. It's like, we have these two things to solve for, and like, we need to put them together and make it work, which is what we did.
Again, just like leaning on the strengths that are there and finding out how to evolve and kind of turn the keys around them while maintaining the core of what is the most important thing that people connect to.
Exactly. I mean, because we all do it in like our own personal lives, right? Like you're like, I want this designer look, but I don't want to spend designer money for it. Like, and then we go look on another retailer site and like Google like whatever it is that we want and find it for cheaper. So it's like, if you can make that for your person or whoever you're trying to market to, like, you're golden.
Yeah. Now, another interesting thing about Fenty Skin is that there's been a pretty strong push, on public channels and everything that this is for both men and women, which I think some people in the industry would say, that's a dangerous way to go. You either sell directly to men or directly to women because they think, buy, and purchase very differently when it comes to stuff like this. why did you guys decide to just say, that is a cool theory, but we don't believe that's how it's going to go with us, and we're going to make these products for both men and women?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a country, and I think as a society, like we're moving that way anyways. Like inclusivity and things just being for everyone based on like how you define your gender, your orientation, like whatever it is. Like there should be no delineation between what products you can and can't use, or like what colors you can and can't wear, what styles do and don't fit your body type. Like we should all have access to everything. And I think that's something that's really core to who Rihanna is as a person and us as a brand. Like we value that. We value everyone's differences in a way that we don't need to point them out. Like it just is what it is, and we're going to make this for all of you. And so I think it just was very it was like a no-brainer for us. And it is a no-brainer. Like that's how it should be. I know when I was growing up, and I still feel the same way. Like I get super frustrated when like everything is in like a girl color. Like me personally, when we were looking at like the colors for the brand, like I get tired of looking at fucking pink skincare. Like I don't want like a soft pink skincare brand, or I don't want like these soft baby colors. Like I don't want to see ads that like just don't resonate with who I am. And it's like, let's just do something that's different, that's like for real people and people who aren't talked to. And like, it can just be for all of us. And so I think when you look at the brand, it's like, we really try to tap into like, what is this large group of people who probably nobody keeps them in mind? Like, what can we do for them? And I think what you see at Fenty Skin, like, is truly that.
Yeah. Oh, I get in this frustration all the time. My biggest one is with like shoes, like running shoes or something. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't need hot pink and purple shoes. I just want a normal black and gray color.
I know. I get so annoyed because I'm always like going to the men's section and buying like the men's version of the shoe, because I'm like, why can't you just make them in like muted colorways for women? Like same thing. I don't want them in fucking purple and pink. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm glad I'm not the only one who struggles with this. It's good to know.
Definitely not. Like I will wear certain like feminine colors on my fingernails, and like that's about it. Like that's all I got.
Yeah, same. I'm with you on that. Now, influencers and community building, we talked about the community side at the front of the conversation, but combining that with some influencer work, and then obviously having a founder who's a built-in influencer has been a really powerful piece of the growth of both Fenty Beauty and Fenty Skin. How do you go about, picking influencers, working with the influencers to make sure that they are helping you build the brand that you see?
Yeah, I think influencers, the way we approach influencers on the brands are different, right? I think I'm not as close to it for Fenty Beauty, so I can't really speak to it, but I will say color and beauty brands basically sell themselves, right? Like you put on a swipe of makeup, a red lipstick, and like everybody is like, cool, I see what this looks like, done.
Yeah.
Easy. I think when it comes to skincare, it's more about like word of mouth and like trial and people actually like believing that a real person is using this product and it works. And so when you think about the people you work for, like you want them to be the people in the demographic of those that you're trying to reach, and you want them to be credible, you want them to be real, you want them to represent what your brand represents. And then again, like it's really easy to pick people. I think I think in general in the influencer community, we've seen this switch from like using mega influencers and like these people who maybe are no longer as credible to using like micro influencers. Like we're all a micro influencer on our own account, right? Like for me, I know like all my friends ask me like, what product should I buy? What makeup should I buy? Like if I post something, everyone's like, I bought that. I don't even have a lot of followers, but like people know that I'm real and like they believe it. And it's like, those are the people you want to be working with, because like they're going to drive business for you. People are going to believe them. They're relatable. Like that's what we want.
Yeah. Because those people are coming from a very genuine place, not just, I got this, I'm going to swipe it on and make $25,000.
Exactly.
They've built up that much loyalty with their customers that if they're going to promote something or say, hey, I'm really liking this, they're also going to give it like the background and the content. And they're going to write a whole caption and they're going to tell them how to use it, how to do it. And that stuff converts faster than anything. That's where I buy most of my things from, is like, just tipsy on Instagram stories. And then I'm swiping up and next day I'm like, wow, I have 4 new face creams.
Literally same. It's kind of embarrassing, but like same.
Yeah. Now I have to ask the burning question that I'm sure everybody who's listening to this is going to say, like, why didn't you ask her? What is it like to work with such an iconic brand founder with Rihanna.
Dope. That's the one thing I'm going to say. In the best way, my job is still a job, right? Like, I think people think working on a brand like this, like, it's very glamorous. We have like big budgets. I just like play and do whatever all day. And like, that's not at all the case. My job is still very much like a grind. It's very much a hustle. It's still like not a 9 to 5. I would say it's like an 8 to 8. It's like a 12-hour day. But, you know, working for a woman of color who is so amazing in her own regard, is so influential, is so opinionated, has so much on her side, and is somebody who I can like respect and look up to and relate to, is an incredible feeling, especially in a time right now. You know, like, my job aside, my perception of who she is and like what our brands stand for, it really aligns with me and like what I want for myself. And that part is really fun. I would say the days where it gets hard and I am like, oh, but it's kind of cool still, you know,
it's still cool.
Like, it's still cool. So yeah, it's just like everything else, but it is really cool. It's really fun. And one thing I haven't said is just like, again, because of who she is, there's a lot that like I can do that I probably wouldn't be able to do on a different brand, right? Like there's things like I can say that I probably wouldn't be able to say. There's like, you know, just all kinds of fun things that we can play with and experiment. Because like she is Rihanna and she is groundbreaking and she pushes boundaries and it's like so fun.
Yeah. And the cool thing is when you have people that you hire that then have that relationship. So the relationship between, you know, Rihanna and Holly then transcends into, as you're building the brand and marketing, you're bringing all of that emotion and all of those feelings that the consumers who then buy the products, you know, down the line, they're still getting a piece of that. It's just this like long branch of family connection, which is what feels so different about Rihanna than other kind of, you know, stores that are started with a very popular brand owner. Is it feels like there is this true connection happening between every stage of the chain. So the consumer, when they get the product, still feels like they are connected directly to Rihanna.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge piece of my job. Like, I don't know how many times I've been like, yeah, no, like that doesn't fit our brand, or like, that's not something we would say, or that's not, you know, like that's a really big piece of making sure that people feel that way and that you get that through everything that we do. So it's good to hear. We're doing a good job. I mean, all of us do it. The whole team, like that's like the forefront of our mind, like every day. Like, does this fit? Does this work? Like,
and like, not to mention, you've been challenged on that task tenfold in 2020. So many things to comment on, to not comment on, to how do you say it? Do you email it? Is it a video? How do you respond to this? How do you manage what's going on in the world? How much impacts your brand? How did you even start to make those decisions with 2020? I mean, normally in a year, you're looking at like one or two things that might need a little bit more care. And then in 2020, you're thrown like every other week is something where you're probably saying, do we respond to this? Does this fit into our narrative? Is this too much? Is the wording okay? Like, how do you even begin to navigate all of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I would say like the team and the people that I work with are amazing in their own right. Like everyone is so thoughtful, so smart, so well informed. And I think all of us collectively come together and we just have discussions about things. And we're like, is this the right time to say something? Is this the right time not to say something? Like what it is, like all those questions. What do we say? What do we say? Being that we're all consumers and the brand is actually like the people who work behind the scenes, it's still fairly small. It's really easy. It's a safe space to just have open, transparent conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're able to be vulnerable and like trust the people you work with and trust the brand founder and the people you stand behind, like it becomes very clear, like your next course of action. I mean, there's definitely been uncomfortable moments for all of us this year. You know, there's been a few times where we're like, yeah, let's not post that today. Or like, let's change the launch of something based on like what's happening in the world. Like maybe we don't announce it on election day. Maybe we pick it 3 days later. Like who knows what it is. But I think, you know, being flexible and being able to, again, embrace what you don't know and still find a solution is key in a time like this.
It's a really great reminder that Michelle Cordero Grant from Lively kind of said something very similar where she said, you know, I look back at myself and any of my worst decisions were made in panic. And my best decisions were made in just staying calm and trying to fix one thing at a time versus like upending the whole world and changing everything that way. Was, she's just saying, okay, if this is the situation, let's take this situation at hand, keep our core, but then how does our core fit into this new world? And just that constant kind of evolution of brand in a, excuse me, in a much like slower, methodical way that keeps its authenticity. Seems like something you guys have really harnessed.
I also think all of us we're people first before we're our jobs and before we're our brand. And I think if as a person, it's your responsibility. Like if something doesn't feel right or something doesn't seem okay, like listen to your gut. There's something to be said for that, And it's like, maybe you don't have a good reason for it. Maybe you can't articulate it well, but if you just raise your hand and you're like, wait, pause, like let's not force ourselves into something that we're not ready for, that we aren't fully comfortable with. I think you're right. Like you just slow down. I do it all the time. Like I tell people, like, I'm not going to be forced into a decision just because like you feel like we have to make a decision. Like, let's sit on it a little bit and make sure it's the right thing to do. Like I just don't think you can ever be too thoughtful, especially not now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, something before we kind of wrap up that I want to talk about is, inclusivity in the beauty industry as a whole. This is something.
My favorite topic.
Yeah, I know, mine too. This is something that, Fenty Rihanna stands for really strong and has been fighting for really hard. And you were actually quoted. I'm gonna read a quote that you actually said in a Nylon magazine. You said, "Within the last 4 years, the industry has made major strides towards inclusivity. But even with all the progress that's been made, from inclusive shade ranges to marketing campaigns that reflect non-traditional standards of beauty, I can still walk into a meeting and be the only person of color." I think this is just a really important moment to pause and pay attention to. That we are making strides, but it's not like we're there, and it's not like we should ever kind of let up on this because Black Lives Matter has been in trending hashtags for a couple of months. We're not really at a place where it's there yet. So what do you think the industry needs to do? What do you think consumers need to do to continue to make these forward strides so that the industry can become truly inclusive top to bottom?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been a few things in the last 6 months that have probably pushed the envelope a little bit in terms of like visibility into like the corporate side of the beauty industry versus like the like marketing consumer facing side of the beauty industry. I think people know and consumers know like your money, your spending dollar has power, right? Like don't support brands that aren't fully transparent with you, that aren't truly inclusive, who don't align with your personal values, who don't market to you specifically. Like that's a huge thing. I think also now too, in terms of that, like there was a time like when I was growing up that like there was no choices. Like there wasn't an option. There wasn't a brand of product that was made for me. Like I kind of like, I got what I got. And like, we don't have to settle for that anymore. People would say like, did you wear makeup? And I would say like, no, not before I started working for Fenty because I didn't have a shade of foundation I could wear. Yeah. And like, that's just the truth. And maybe I did somewhere, maybe some brand made it and they hid it in a shelf and I just never found it, but they weren't talking to me. So like, I didn't know. Yeah. And so I think we all have a personal responsibility, just like with anything that we support and no matter what we do with our money and our time is like doing things that align with like who you are and like what you want to have happen. I know for me, in terms of my career and in terms of like what I do, being outspoken about the fact that like I can no longer be the only brown person in the room is huge. I'm sure my coworkers and people are tired of hearing me talk about it. We've definitely done a really good job of trying to diversify our corporate office over the last like year or so, but like it's a thing. And I think when you're not the minority, like you just don't realize what's happening, but it's been, the whole Black Lives Matter movement has been very eye-opening. And it's been very eye-opening for my coworkers, I would say. Like, I don't know if you've seen, there was like this meme of the little white girl in front of a shelf of all brown dolls. And I'm like, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like when you walk into a store, you walk into an ad somewhere and all you see is something that's not made for you. Yeah. And like, in order to like have empathy or compassion or realize like why this needs to change, like the tables had to be flipped a little bit. And it can be uncomfortable, but I think it's really important in and really like meaningful. Like there is so much beauty and diversity. Like our biggest strengths and our biggest assets are the things that make us different from each other. And like we fully need to embrace that and allow for the space in corporate environments, allow for that in marketing campaigns, allow for that everywhere. Because it just makes us all better. And it's prettier and it's just more fun. And like I don't want to look at all of one thing ever, no matter what it is. I don't even want to look at all of myself. Like I just want there to be diversity.
Oh yeah. I love it. And it's exciting that there are brands like Fenty that are pushing this narrative and able to fight for it because, you think about just at a dinner table, if you had 5 of the same exact people, like that conversation on day 3 is just going to be the same old conversation again. Whether it's skin color, background, facial structure, disability or not, the way you process information, all of these different things make the world a better place because the more perceptions we can get into one conversation, the better the output is going to be and the more fun. Yeah.
1,000%. And we're going to make like, we make better products. We like when it comes to business, like your business will be better off if the people who are helping you and the people who are building these businesses are diverse and they have different backgrounds and different perspectives. Like, and you'll be able to actually reach more people with a different set of eyes because more like we're all looking at it. And so it's incredibly important. It's something I'm super passionate about. I think I might have gotten like a little bit of a slap on the hand for making that quote in the Nylon magazine, but like, listen, it is what it is. And I am going to say it 1,000 times until the industry does something about it. So
keep saying it because we need it. And I'm right here with you. Only 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One, do you have any advice for, someone who is a physical retailer? They've been in physical retail mostly their entire career. Now they're starting to shift online, which then comes this whole thing of you really got to nail down your brand online. And that's a lot different than the brand in store. How does someone just, day one, I have no idea what to do. I'm trying to get e-commerce set up. How do you start to really like nail down that digital brand?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that less is more. And I say that because, especially digitally, there's so much information. There's so much being thrown at us. Like consumers can only take in so much. And like, you can't be a brand that has 1,000 different stories to tell and 1,000 different things you want to communicate. Like you have a finite amount of time to get someone sold into what you're doing. And so it's like, pick your core, pick your hero, pick what like your brand and what you think you do best and do that first. Like don't do all the million other things that like might be more exciting or who knows what. Like pick the thing that you're good at and transition that because that's where you're going to win. Like don't start with the thing that you're like just okay with. And I think you build from there. I think again, like it's so easy to update things and make changes and like delete stuff from the internet. Like you can literally experiment and do whatever you want. Like you can put up a paid ad and it could fail and you can take it down in a day. Like it is so easy to just try and learn and you just have to start somewhere. So I would say like when it comes to building a brand online, like less is more. Pick a platform that you can win at. Pick a place where your consumers are and deliver them a couple key stories and a couple key things they want and then build from there.
I love that. Such great advice. Now, final question to wrap the episode, per every episode wrap. What does resilience mean to you, Holly?
The resilience. Whew. Okay, so you asked me this and you prepped me for this answer or to answer this question, and I'm still not prepped. So I think resilience to me just means like literally just never giving up. At my company, we have these credos at Kendo. We have these credos, and one of them is perseverance. And I think it's the same thing as resilience. Like in order to be successful in anything, it's like one step at a time. You got to keep going. I think people think winning is like an overnight thing. We all hear stories about like entrepreneurs and like Bill Gates and people who took like 20 years to make their first million. Like that's fucking resilience. You know, like no matter what it is you're doing, like as long as you're taking active steps every day to get there and not letting like life and things that happen completely knock you down and get you off course, like that's being resilient. To me, that's resilience. And I think resilient retail in a time like this is like being adaptive and figuring out a new path and like being okay with change. Like all those things are mean resilience. So
I love it. Love it so much. Thank you so much for coming on, Holly. For the people who are listening who love Fenty Beauty or Fenty Skin, do you have like a product that you're like, everybody must have this one?
I have a couple. Okay, so people who haven't, I don't know who hasn't bought into Fenty Beauty. If you haven't bought Fenty Beauty, like you're crazy. But I would say that our Fenty Beauty's Gloss Bomb is literally one of like my all-time favorite beauty products. And I'm not just saying that because I worked on the brand. I love that thing. It's for daytime, it's for nighttime, it's for bedtime. Like that formula is amazing. So if you were going to buy one Fenty Beauty thing, I would buy our Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb. And I would say in terms of Fenty Skin, this is a little secret that it's not really like a secret, but like I don't like, I used to not wash my face very often. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm that person that's like, can't really be bothered.
I've been having to take a very serious effort to do it. Like I have to consciously work on it. So I'm with you.
Me too. And part of that was just because like I didn't enjoy the experience of it. Like I was like, this isn't great. Like it just wasn't like this fun thing for me to do. I found it like, to be a hassle, and then like your skin feels gross afterwards and like all these things. Our cleanser changed my life. Like I could spend every day washing my face 5 times a day with our cleanser. So I would say like if you're like me and you want to look like you did the most, but you do the least, get yourself a Gloss Bomb and our Fenty Skin Cleanser and you can go no wrong.
Love it. Thank you so much, Holly, for being on today. It was so much fun, per usual. You're just a fantastic person to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
Such an inspiration. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you.